Hello and welcome to the Not Quite Otaku Anime Podcast, Episode 3. I'm Joe,
And I'm Brandon.
and today we're going to be talking about a trilogy of movies, not ones that maybe people think of when they think of a trilogy of movies. So this is not Lord of the Rings, this is not Star Wars, this is, take it away, Brandon.
We're going to be talking about the Resident Evil CGI movies.
Yes, so we're not even talking about the live action ones. We are talking about the CG Resident Evil movies. There are 3 of them that I would say maybe not everyone has heard of.
Yeah, I would say these probably are a little more off the cuff or offshoots, but people who love Resident Evil are probably familiar with them, which is, I think, where it comes in for us. And I would just like to say this is going to be a bigger part of, we're workshopping a title, but we're going to be talking about anime and video game crossovers, and so that is what inspired this discussion.
Yeah, and since, Not Quite Otaku Anime Podcast is part of Wooster Stream, which is our YouTube channel, there's going to be a lot of crossovers too with video games and anime. And so sometimes we might go, which again, I'd say this constitutes as anime. I think we were talking about it earlier, but I said I saw the word anime in the credits, and so that makes it anime. Also, I mean, it comes from Japan, and as we've seen with a lot of animation, Netflix is a good example of, they do like the 3D animation. It's a little different than this. This is I'd say like almost looks like you're just watching a cutscene, but
Yeah, it very much feels like you're
For 90
watching
minutes.
a video game cutscene for 90 minutes.
yeah.
But we wanted to watch these because neither of us had seen them, and we both love Resident Evil, so I thought this might be an interesting thing to talk about.
Yeah, so let's start. Brandon, what's your history with the series Resident Evil?
So I have played all of the main Resident Evil games, all the numbered Resident Evil games I've played. I haven't played all of the offshoots, all of the spin-offs, so like I haven't played Code Veronica or Code Veronica X. I haven't played 0, but I've played every version of 1 through 7 now, save for the most recent Resident Evil 3 remake, and that's just because Resident Evil 3 is my least favorite of all the games, so I just wasn't jumping to get a $60 remake of a 5-hour game.
Yeah, understandable. That makes sense.
What about you?
So I have played Resident Evil the way it is meant to be played. I started with 4. Being a Nintendo fanboy my whole life, I only had 4, but we actually had, when we were younger, gone in and bought 2, 3, and Code Veronica. And in typical fashion of me with video games, I didn't play any of them, but they sat on my shelf. I still have Resident Evil 2 over there for the GameCube. But so I started with 4, and then as one naturally does, I played the Umbrella Chronicles games. So Umbrella Chronicles and Dark Side Chronicles on the Wii. So those are like a light gun version of the stories, basically. It takes you through. And then I had played, we played through 5 and 6 together. So those were pretty recent since they came out on Switch. And a little bit of, what is it? Revelations.
Revelations, yeah.
Yeah, on the Switch. I played a little bit of the series. So I do happen to own, like I said, I have Resident Evil Remake for the GameCube and 0 for the GameCube, as well as for the Switch, which I am also currently playing through the Resident Evil Remake. And so I'm trying to, my goal is to be able to play through the series, get through like 1. I have 2, the remake on PlayStation, and then I have 7. So I want to play that, play 1, play 0, play the 2 remake, eventually get to the 3 remake. I'll play Code Veronica. So I'm going to try to work my way through, basically. And I have a little weird history with it.
Yeah, and I think it is worth noting, I also started the series with Resident Evil 4, and then I played 2 and 3, and then I played 1, and then 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah.
So
we both went a little out of order.
Yeah, I've been kind of all over the place, but I have played all of the games in the main series, and I think it is fair to say that both of us are huge Leon Kennedy fanboys.
Yeah,
we love Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 and 2 are my favorite games, and these movies star Leon, so they're right up our alley.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the thing, is that when you start off with Resident Evil 4, it kind of sets you up to be a Leon fanboy, I think. So yeah, I was super excited to know that all three of these movies star Leon. So if you are also a Leon Kennedy fanboy, you will probably enjoy these movies to some extent. But yeah, and then just another thing to add too is, so although I have not played all of the games, and again, like I said, I played the Umbrella Chronicles and Dark Side Chronicles, which give you the gist, gives you the story of Resident Evil. I think one of the things that I really enjoy about it and I'm drawn to is the lore around it. I mean, just the story, the characters, even as over the top and ridiculous as it can be sometimes, I think that is also what I enjoy about it. So, although I haven't played every game, have read and gotten involved and looked up the stuff to be interested in like what the story of Resident Evil is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the biggest appeals. I can't think of another game series that has as much content of one continuous story. Like there's going to be series that have more game entries, but you're talking there's 20 plus Resident Evil games.
I was gonna say I
My
don't know.
count is about right. And
I mean, yeah, I don't even know.
and they're all within the same canon. They're all telling one continuous story from like 1998 or whatever. They're just 1995 maybe. I can't remember the exact date of when the events of Resident Evil kick off, but like they're telling a story that takes place over the course of like 25 years so far, and every game is involved in the same overarching story.
Yeah, it's not like there hasn't been really just like a reboot of the series, or okay, we're gonna retell the franchise, retell the story or whatever. It has just been everything connects to everything and it has evolved. So I think that is like one of the things about it that is so kind of cool. I don't know.
I think it's very unique in video games that most serialized games will either have a reboot at some point, or there'll be something like Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 16 will come out eventually, but no Final Fantasy game is directly. There's a couple direct sequels in there, but for the most part, they're all independent stories.
Yeah, and they let you know that it's it's like 10 and 10-2. Like obviously that's the next game, so it's not like
they're very clear when they do that. So yeah, that's our feelings towards Resident Evil. Pretty much all positive, even towards the bad games. Resident Evil 6 was fun to play together co-op, not fun to play on your own.
Yeah, Resident Evil 5 and 6, I mean, I would never advise anyone to play those games on your own, but with co-op with a friend, it is actually a lot of fun, and if you take them for what they are.
So let's dive into these movies, though. So
yeah, let's get into the movies. You're right.
Yeah. So there's like
enough
we said
talk about these games.
Yeah, we could talk. Maybe that could be a whole nother video we make talking about Resident Evil, the games.
Resident Evil 4, one of the best games of all time.
But anyway, so we got these movies. The first one came out in 2008. That was Resident Evil Degeneration. Mm-hmm. And you get your reunion for Claire and Leon, which may not be so big of a deal to you, because I don't know if you've played through Resident Evil 2 all the way, but
I played the beginning of it at your house. I know the story. I know the story of Resident Evil 2, so I got the impact of, hey, look, it's Claire. Hey, look, it's Leon. They're together again.
So that all starts. So this movie starts. You have Claire and Leon. They both end up at this airport at the same time, conveniently, and there's a outbreak.
Leon's not in the airport to start.
Well, not at the start, no.
Okay.
But Claire's at the airport. There's an outbreak that happens. Leon gets called in because he is now government agent Leon Kennedy, who handles potential bioweapon attacks. And
he's been. I mean.
Well, no, I know, but that's who he is in the world now. Like that was his.
Okay. This isn't like Resident Evil 2 where it's like first day on the force.
Yeah, exactly. This is set post Resident Evil 4, which I don't think you'd really know watching it, but they don't really make any references.
Yeah, they don't really talk about it in this one. The only way I knew it was that it came out in 2008. So Resident Evil 4 came out in 2004, I think, or something. So.
And I will say the one big complaint I have about this movie is if you wanted this fun romp of Leon and Claire being reunited and riffing off each other and working together, you're not going to get that because they're two separate stories. They spend very little screen time together.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about... Okay, so we're going to talk about all three. I'm going to start off. This is definitely the weakest of the three, and I think it's by a significant amount. Like, I think there is a a great uptick in quality once you get to the second and third movies. This one, I mean, it definitely looks. Again, it's 2008, but man, it looks like the characters look a little weird. The people look a little weird. I don't know. I don't know if that was got you, but
It's interesting that you think this is definitely the weakest of the three, and significantly. The animation is clearly the worst out of all of them.
oh yeah,
It visually looks the least appealing. It looks it. So it was made in 2008, and it kind of reminds me of something like late 90s, early 2000s CG.
Leon's face looks so weird
Yeah,
in this one. It is, and also the other thing that got me is like every woman's lips look like they've had collagen injections. They have the most ridiculously full lips that look like, and then as if they put lip gloss on as well. So in the midst of this outbreak, everyone's got these ridiculously plump lips, and it just bothered me to no end.
yeah, and I guess for point of reference, this looks significantly worse than Resident Evil 4 cutscenes do. I think that's fair to say. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, like yeah, I guess I'm trying to think of like,
It's different. It's not
if
a
you
direct
put those in
comparison,
HD,
but,
yeah. No, you're right. I mean, Leon doesn't look like a weirdo in Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's hunky Leon in that one. So, this one he looked like he got hit with a bat partway.
But it's interesting because
along the way.
I felt like if we're going to talk about all three movies overall, this one clearly looked the worst. I think this one had the best writing.
Oh my god.
I think it had the best story of the three.
Oh my god. Okay, wait. I am so
And
I'm
to
so
defend this, I
opposite
guess we're going to
opinion.
have to go into talking about the other ones because
We'll get to those. We'll stick with this for a bit, so we don't get too sideways or anything. But oh my god, okay. I did not think you would say that this had the best story. This to me was the least interesting story, I think. I mean, so you got you got this corrupt senator. First off, it starts off there in the airport. It's got the most boring start to it. I don't know, man. Like it was pretty. I mean, it was definitely the ridiculousness when that plane crashes into the airport. I mean, like that to me was just, that was very Resident Evil 6 of it to do that before Resident Evil 6 was a thing.
if we want to go down that route, I can talk about the other two movies and even more so that way. But I understand what you're getting
Right,
at.
so okay, so I guess
So-
instead of me
so-
sitting here and saying why it was bad, I want to hear why you thought it was good, and maybe we could talk about that.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to assert that this is a well-written movie and that the plot is incredibly interesting. I just thought the other two were so bad along those lines that this one stood out to me as being acceptable. It had concepts that it explored. The side characters, so the sister and brother characters, I think they were integrated into the plot fairly decently. I think they actually explored their kind of relationship, and especially the woman's feelings towards her brother and towards everything, and wanting to kind of redeem her family. I think there was a relatability to it, and I think that her character, and I say she's the one that of all these movies was the best written side character, but now her name is escaping me.
I know, I'm blanking on it too. You think she was the best written side character?
Between all of these stories, I would say so. But again, I think the writing in the next two were quite subpar.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, okay, I'll give you, as a character. So you have, man, it is escaping me. I gotta look this up or something. But I agree with you that the relationship between the sister and the brother, it's interesting. I mean, it gives you at least some motivation as to why he turns into this crazy monster later. I just think it was so, the story just like, all right, so in the realm of Resident Evil, okay, so we're going to take it from that lens, but in terms of believability, it just seemed like I felt like the other two seemed more plausible to me if there was going to be this outbreak. Like, it just was. I
Yeah.
mean, it was just so goofy sometimes. And again, Resident Evil is goofy. That I think if anyone tries to take it seriously, um, I don't know, you're probably in the wrong series. But just like the outbreak, like, the plane crashes and then the zombies come off the plane and then they're all there. And then my biggest thing was, how does everyone always forget how zombies work? Like, it is like the crazy. I mean, like,
Well,
these.
you're supposed to believe within the Resident Evil world, zombies are not public knowledge. That
But they all knew about Raccoon City, didn't they?
they are aware that Raccoon City was kind of blown off the map.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think the idea of within the canon of Resident Evil is like a lot of that information of what exactly happened was covered up. That it was that because that was the plot point of the beginning of Resident Evil 6, where the president was going to go public with everything that happened in Raccoon City. So I think people are meant to be kind of vaguely aware that there's some weird stuff going on, but the idea that zombies are something that you may encounter in your lifetime, I don't think that's meant to be taken as kind of like common knowledge, which even in like compared to modern society is a weird comparison to make because like zombies aren't
Modern.
real, but in the real world that we live in, there's been so much zombie media that like
We all know how to kill them
yeah, exactly. We
when
all
the day
know
comes.
we all know what to do. But I think that you're just meant to assume that that's not the case in the world of Resident Evil, which is very convenient. It's a convenience that's in any zombie media at all because the story can't exist if everyone knows you just can bash their skull in it.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so to give you, Angela Miller is the
Yeah,
character.
Angela
she's
and
she's a
Curtis.
soldier.
Yeah,
And
Curtis
then
Miller
Curtis
is
Miller.
the brother.
Yeah. So and then again, this is a little convenient Deus Ex Machina. I don't know if this is the right use of that term, but she's like, oh my gosh, like I'm this soldier who's tasked with getting into this airport and rescuing people, and then oh my gosh, it's my brother who's the guy who's causing all this like chaos.
Like the thing that is the most consistent thread between these three movies is plot conveniences, and
yeah.
I think they only get worse as it goes on.
Okay, there's definitely some ones in the later ones where I was like, okay, you know what, that was pretty convenient that so and so just happened to be in the area around the time. It's just, yeah, there's a lot of that where it's like, I just happen to be in the area, and then oh my gosh, all three of us are together, and now we can somehow escape this incredibly difficult situation.
Yeah, but I think just to kind of wrap up my thoughts on this movie, I said, I think the animation was not great. I think Leon and the Angela Miller character, I think they riffed off each other decently well. And keeping those two together worked in terms of having someone for Leon to deliver lines to. And this will lean into what I think was bad about the second movie, but we'll save it for there. But I think they at least wrote characters that made sense as long as you're willing to look past the convenience of where everyone ended up, which you have to do for all these movies.
I just felt like the characters were like it's, oh, here's the evil senator, and he was just so ridiculously stupid, and or the corrupt senator, I should maybe say, and then there's the the British doctor who is very obviously going to be a bad guy. It's
Yeah,
like,
that was telegraphed from the beginning. It was very clear, and that's it's very Resident Evil of like, look this way, but this is the real person pulling the strings, but but the characters in universe don't.
Yeah, and it's like the whole like love interest. The one thing I will say though that I thought was weird was the Angela Leon relationship, how he'd always be distracted by his phone, or his phone would get in the way of like every time it seemed like there was going to be this pronouncement of love or feelings, and he just would get a call, and I was like,
yeah,
it seemed really weird and out of place. I don't know. It was like
it was
funny,
one of
also
those things that this is a movie where every character they introduce in it that isn't a main character already in Resident Evil needs to be gone by the end of the movie. So it's kind of like you just got to deal with the fact that there's going to be those things that they can never be too close.
Yeah, I will have to say though, as Leon fanboy, that also means I'm a Hunnigan fanboy, and I was super excited when she appeared in the movie. So
Yeah.
that was one thing that I just wanted to add as a plus to the movie, as though Hunnigan will make appearances in all three. But I was just like, all right, way to keep that going. Um, yeah, I mean, so I don't know. My opinion of this movie is, if you are a fan of Resident Evil, I think it's fine. I would say though, if you're gonna pick, there's three of them, so if you're gonna pick it, to me, I'd say skip this one and watch the other two. But we'll get into those. I don't know. You seem to feel the opposite though.
Well, yeah,
All right.
and we'll roll into the next one. So the next one,
All right.
Resident Evil Damnation.
Yes.
This was made, I think, about 4 years later, probably 2012.
2012. Yep. 2012.
And this was the great Leon Kennedy's greatest hits is what this movie was.
Yes, and that's what I loved about it.
You
I
have
loved every second
you
of
have
that.
Lickers, you have Las Plagas, you have not just one tyrant or Mr. X, as you may know him as. You have like three of them.
There were like 3 or 4 of them.
And they're extra large. And Leon, for a lot of the movie, doesn't even have someone with him. He's just delivering one-liners to the camera.
And I loved every second of
And
it.
I hated it. I absolutely hated it. It felt like the biggest pandering mess I've ever seen.
That was the exact reason why I love that movie, is that it was, if you like Leon Kennedy, if Resident Evil 4 happens to be your second favorite game of all time, which it's mine, then you will love this movie. But I know you also love Resident Evil 4, so I guess that doesn't apply. Because
Yeah.
okay, so like first off, I think the movie I think it starts off like better. I just think this is the thing I think about the other two movies, is it just starts you off. It's just like, boom, here we go. We're in this. This is what's happening. As opposed to where, Damnation was like, hey, we're in the airport, and then she's like talking to the random little kid, and then like I guess there's a relationship there, whatever. But it just was like,
that was they were like, oh, maybe these characters are going to be important, and it's like,
like
no,
Claire the babysitter, and it was just
it's like,
nope,
they're going to be off screen for the whole movie, and then you're going to see them at the end and kind of wonder why they're around.
Yeah, like don't they pick her up in a car or something at the end or something?
Yeah,
at
the
that?
very end of the movie.
So
Yep.
weird. Yeah, it just So anyway, but I think these start off. First off, my biggest also positive is they fixed his face. Leon looks like a normal person again. So I think so obviously one of the big things, huge jump in the quality of animation from this and then the next one, obviously.
Yeah, this movie looks way better than the previous entry.
Yeah, and so this one takes place now in a fictional Eastern European, kind of has that former Soviet bloc.
Yeah, I believe it's called the Slovak Republic or something like that.
Yeah, it's like they took like everything they could combine to make it sound very former Soviet satellite nation.
Yeah.
And so then it is, you have where, I'm trying to think about how it starts with. There's Leon. Help me out here. I think.
So at the start of the film, you have Leon is in this fictional nation
in the country,
that with the intention being that the government is there because there is a threat of bioweapons. And
right. So this is where we start getting into those the bioorganic weapons.
Yeah, the BOWs, the bioorganic. Yeah, right, bioorganic weapons. And so he is there operating to stop whatever is happening with the investigate and stop the bioorganic weapon use in a military conflict. At the start of the movie, the military is called out. Leon gets a call. Hunnigan tells him he's got to leave because the U.S. is pulling out of this fictional nation, and he has to go home. And Leon promptly says, "You called me off from vacation to do this. I don't care what you're saying. I'm going to stay here and make sure no BOWs are being used."
Yep. And then the liquors. So then he gets in the situation with the liquors, right? And gets captured.
Yeah. So then he ends up in a parking garage. There are liquors in the parking garage.
There's the old guy who controls them.
Yep. And there's the old guy who controls them, which is a big. So I think worth noting, all of these movies are considered Resident Evil canon, And
Yeah,
there are some very interesting things and like big plot points if they chose to bring into the games that are very relevant, because they have this whole version of Las Plagas in this movie that allows you to basically control T virus people.
as to what it attacks, so that it's not just like
Yeah.
it becomes whatever it's infected doesn't become just these ravenous monsters that attack anything. Is then the person who is in that person themselves is infected with the version of it, which then allows them to help control
Yeah, so yeah, it's
the
like
other ones.
it's an advanced created version of Las Plagas that lets you control things that have been infected with the T virus, is what I gathered. Like it lets you control lickers, it lets you control zombies, and kind of that like
Even the
that would
tyrants too,
yeah,
right?
and that would yeah, because that's all. Well, tyrants maybe not. I don't
No,
think
because
they ever
no,
showed
wait, the
that. Yeah,
tyrants were separate, weren't
yeah,
they?
the
Because
tyrant
the lickers were
yes.
fighting the tyrants. So that was my bad. So
Yeah,
yeah,
not the
that's right.
tyrants, because the tyrants are a whole different. They're the G virus, I believe.
And that's the president of the Slovak Republic, who I think is part of what is she's controlling that
Yes, and
portion of it.
yeah, and I guess we're jumping ahead a little bit with that.
Yeah, sorry,
But yeah, I just thought it was interesting to note that like these movies have things that could be very relevant within the canon of Resident Evil, because they are considered canon, but like they haven't kind of made their way into the games, and I think that's okay. You know,
I think it's fun. Like I mean, I guess I could see how that could be a game, but I did enjoy just in terms of all three of these is it was fun to just kind of watch the Resident Evil story play out. I think that's one of the things about the games, and especially the later ones, like you get to 5 and 6, where they start to get a little over the top. It's a little bit easier to deal with in the movie form than sometimes when you're like playing it and then you're just like, oh my God, Chris just punched a boulder or something like that.
yeah.
It's just
But
like
it definitely helps because they're shorter. I think that's a big
yeah,
part
exactly.
of that.
That's probably what it is. It's 90 minutes of this ridiculousness as opposed to a 10-15 hour game of this ridiculousness, which
Yeah.
then at times can become tedious.
But what did you think
But-
about, so with this movie, I know you seem to have liked
Yep.
it a lot, at least more than the last. What did you think about the new characters they introduced?
So the guys, like the two guys from the East, or
Yeah.
from the Slovak Republic.
Yeah.
So like, okay, so the guy who is very into America, of course, is very cheesy and over the top. Like where he's like, I love American culture, and I'm just gonna, act like I'm a rapper and have like piercings and wear hoodies and stuff, whatever. At first, I was like, okay, this is a little too much, but then I actually thought it was really nice. Like he started to actually become a real character, and when he turns, like I was bummed, because I really thought, I was like, oh man, he'll make it through the movie, definitely. I don't know, I just thought, I don't know, maybe that was
Yeah.
naive of me to think that, but I thought
that was I think JD was
JD,
his
yeah.
name. Yeah. And I think he was the strongest character added in this. I agree with you that he seems much more like a caricature at the start of it, where it's just like
for sure.
just full of stereotypes, but they do really play with that it comes down to like, oh, he's just a guy that was looking for a place in the world, so he got caught up in this. So I guess to clarify, him and Buddy are revolutionaries who are using this Las Plagas virus to try to control bioweapons in order to overthrow their country and gain their freedom.
Yes, because there's a kind of a civil war conflict going on where there's a group of rebels trying to
Yeah,
overthrow the
but
government.
his story arc is he wasn't ever too keen on the idea, or really didn't have a dog in the fight in terms of being a freedom fighter, but his friends were doing it and he wanted to just be a part of something, and you get that a lot with his interactions with Leon, where they capture Leon early on and he is their prisoner for a decent chunk of the beginning. And him and JD just kind of, you can tell JD's just kind of a nice guy that he's not looking to leverage every bit of power he can gain. He sees that Leon seems to be willing to help them and just wants to be friends with him. And that's all he really wants out of anyone. And it's like, it's a nice character. I do enjoy that one.
Yeah, I think obviously it's a Buddy, or as I'm refreshing the names of the characters, Alexander or Sasha. Very very Russian of him to have like 20 different names.
Yeah. Buddy is what he's referred to throughout the movie.
He is? Okay, I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
Man, my memory's terrible. But he's very much the, I'm the stoic revolutionary. I'm gonna fight for revenge. But granted, he's doing it because, I mean, wasn't his wife murdered? She was killed, wasn't it?
Yes, his family was killed in some attack by the government. I
Because wasn't
believe.
it, is this his wife was a school teacher?
Yeah, he was a school teacher. So was his wife.
Yeah,
The
and the
school
school.
got blown up by bombs, presumably just a casualty of war type thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's out for revenge. Um, yeah, I mean, I think they were good. I think again we're gonna talk about Resident Evil fan service. I was like, Ada's back, awesome. I love Ada Wong. I think so. Basically, any character that has to do with Resident Evil 4, I'm pretty much all for. So, I thought that was cool. Which actually brings me to, I think one of the best parts about this movie, and even I think it does it better than the next one we're going to talk about, is the action sequences in this are so ridiculous and so fun to watch because they are just like the parts where they'll zoom in. It's like, he's like gonna he like stab something through someone's head or something, and it's like you see it like coming through the other side, or there's like these like close-ups, these zoom ins and stuff that are just like so fun. And then also the action in the fights, you've got Leon fights, so you've got this president, uh, Svetlana, who is also just this crazy martial artist, of course, as
Yeah,
you
she
know
was the best trained person in this country and also the diplomatic leader of them.
yeah,
You just
so
got to take it as it is.
that seems very Eastern European of it. Like, like she probably wrestled bears as a kid or something like that. Like,
Yeah,
that's
that
just
was
part of the
definitely the
training.
vibe they were going for.
So yeah, but the fight scenes, I think what I enjoy is like the fight sequences between, her and Leon and her and Ada. It does have this sort of very choreographed fight, kind of like you would see in a Hollywood fight scene. But I really enjoyed that about those. So I thought that was really, really cool and fun, and I thought it was done well. And with like I said, the zoom ins and the zoom outs, and so I think that's something that also really is a highlight of this movie.
They were certainly better than the first one. I just
Yeah,
for
like I
this
can't even remember anything about the first one, any fight scenes. I don't even know if there were any. To be
no,
honest.
I mean there were, but there was nothing of note really. It was very much more classic Resident Evil of big thing that you shoot or random slow zombies that you shoot, things like that. Not the
Yeah.
kind of action you get out of this movie. But this entire movie, I could not get past how much just like Leon fan service this movie was, and especially there must have been a dozen times that Leon delivered a one-liner to the camera, and I'm
Didn't
just
do it
like,
directly to the camera.
yeah, he did a couple times, and a lot of times it was there were no other characters with him, where he would just say things after
I
he
talk
did
to myself
something when
sometimes.
he was on his own. I couldn't get past it. It was it just this whole movie felt like pandering. Like when I said
No,
at the
see, that's
start,
what I liked is that it felt like it was in line with his character. It felt like I was playing a game as Leon Kennedy. It felt very Resident Evil 4 or even Resident Evil 6 later on. Can't speak for Resident Evil 2, but it definitely reminded me of Resident Evil 4 with his little kind of quips and stuff between him and Ada and him and Hunnigan. And
yeah, that was
him and
very much
everyone.
something that was introduced more strongly in Resident Evil 4. Wasn't quite so present in Resident Evil 2.
I'll say he was a young guy. He wasn't as jaded and
But yeah, I
whatever.
couldn't move past just the fan service mess that this was. That it was trying to like everything you love about Resident Evil 2 and 4, they tried to shove into this one movie, and just none of it, to me, none of it fit. There were good moments, but then you have the end of the movie where there's like three tyrants who are
Okay, the tyrants at the end was a little
25
ridiculous,
feet
and
tall
the fact
and-
that he doesn't die getting thrown into a building, like where
Well-
literally your spine would be snapped in half. I feel like
see,
at that point.
see that I just chalked up to it's video game logic, Resident Evil world, whatever. But
Yeah.
it's just more this. Everything that showed up was just like, oh, these are the favorite parts of Resident Evil 2 and 4, so we're just gonna shove them into a movie, and we're gonna have everything you want to see, but like it all just feels like it's piecemealed together, and like it's almost like they started at that and tried to write a story around it, rather than in the first movie. I did feel like they wrote a story, and it might not have been the most interesting, but it very clearly had a beginning, middle, end. It felt like it was its own unique thing. Where this, it felt like they piecemealed together all the best parts of Resident Evil 2 and 4 and came out with a mess.
But see, I feel like the story itself was actually tight in the sense that like you knew what it was. There's this, you have these rebels, you have this conflict, and then there's sort of the revelations about, this president and, her corruption and who has what virus and all these different things, because then they go into that crazy lab and, it's all revealed that there's all these whatever, it looks like a beehive almost or something. So I mean, I don't know, I thought the story itself was pretty clear, and I think much more interesting in terms of that than compared to Damnation, or I'm sorry, Degeneration. Yeah. Like I thought Degeneration was just, it felt like it just felt like a kind of run-of-the-mill zombie story, whereas this felt a little more of the. And maybe this is also partly because I haven't gone through as much of the earlier games. It's just like I felt like this felt a little more Resident Evil to me in terms of it's like, here's these bioweapons and here's this deep political intrigue. But again, when you look back at the old games, it was just, a mansion, and then it was, a city. And
yeah, I think that's a fair critique, or at least a fair comparison, that Degeneration felt much more what Resident Evil 1 through 3 look like. Damnation much more what 4 through 6 look like.
Yeah.
Like there is definitely a separation between those two.
So I guess then going on to, so we got the last one. So I guess kind of to go through it, I really enjoyed Damnation. Seems like you didn't enjoy it as much.
Like, I still had fun with it. Like, I didn't absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
But I could not get over the pandering. It just felt like it was pandering every second of it, and I just think like, oh, I deserve a little more than that. Maybe, I don't know. Your audience deserves more.
Well, maybe you get more of that with Resident Evil Vendetta from 2017. I don't know. So, so this seems much more like a continuation of, whereas Degeneration and Damnation, it doesn't seem like there's much of a clear link between the two. I feel like there's at least a little bit more of a link. Going in, it feels like Degeneration, or God, is it Damnation?
Damnation.
Oh my gosh, Damnation and Vendetta have a little bit more of like their worlds are a little closer related. You know what I mean?
And I think that might be. I think Damnation was released as a Resident Evil 6 lead up, and Vendetta is a Resident Evil 6 post, like kind of a not really an epilogue in that it directly relates to the story of Resident Evil 6, but Vendetta takes place after Resident Evil 6.
Yeah. I mean, there is footage of Resident Evil 6 in the credits of Damnation, so it's very clear they are also promoting the game. But yeah. So what about, okay, so with Resident Evil Vendetta,
so I'm just going to say,
let's think.
First thought right off the bat, they did not explain why they were at the Resident Evil mansion, right? That was never brought up.
Not that I know.
They never addressed that fact.
So that was the actual mansion?
Yes, that was the mansion from the original Resident Evil.
Okay.
And it was, again, one of the many plot conveniences in this movie that I don't know. Like, again, it felt very just fan servicey of like, oh, hey, you recognize this mansion, right? I was like, why are they there? What, like, please, Chris needed to make at least a statement recognizing the fact that he was back at that mansion, and he never did.
Yeah, maybe that's why I didn't even. I mean, I'll be the first to admit I sometimes miss very obvious things in movies, video games. I don't know. Sometimes just that kind of stuff, I just miss it. But yeah, because why are there people there still then?
Okay, so to go into it, this movie starts. Chris is hunting a bioterrorist, essentially. He sells bioweapons to the highest bidder. He has no real affiliation. He's just there to make money. And for some reason, he has headquartered himself in the original Resident Evil mansion. And they never address why this is. That's where the opening sequence takes place. And then at some point, they have a line about like, oh, like, we got him at his base, so he has found another place to set up a base at. And no one is acknowledging that the start of the movie takes place at the original Resident Evil mansion, and it just feels like a thing they threw in because they're like, oh, people will love it because this is the original Resident Evil where Chris started his story and we can see him there again, but also we're not going to justify why he's there.
Yeah, seemed like a smaller version of the mansion too, didn't it?
No, not at all. It
I don't
was
know.
they didn't explore the whole mansion, like they didn't show everything, but it was
I guess that's true.
like it was 100% without a doubt the original Resident Evil mansion, and it's never brought up in the movie as far as I can tell.
Well, considering I wasn't even sure that it was the original mansion, I, yeah, I guess they probably didn't go into much explaining of it then.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, the one thing about Vendetta, I think, then now to kind of go in what separates it from the other movies is like I thought this was like legit, kind of scary, freaky. It definitely this one really leaned into the gore and horror part of Resident Evil. I felt like more than any of these other animated movies, which
Yeah,
you know,
this one felt a lot more actually like what you would traditionally think of anime, like felt a lot more horror anime inspired, if that makes sense.
yeah, I could. I mean, I could see that. I could just think like in general, just it had horror. I mean, like that kid at the beginning is, you know, it was creepy horror setup where it's like, hey kid, what's going? Oh my god! And then it's it attacks the guy. So I just felt like there was a lot more, and then just like the straight up blood, people getting ripped apart. It didn't shy away at all from any of the gore and horror. Whereas the other ones sort of felt like with Damnation, felt a little more just like the kind of action Resident Evil that games like 6 had become. Where this was just, it felt like a little bit more of a blend of the two, where you're getting like legit terror because, and then like even in the sequence like with Rebecca Chambers in the university, where she's pretty helpless until Chris
Yeah,
conveniently swoops in.
yeah.
But
So to just overview of this movie, it starts
well, yeah, sure.
following Chris is on a mission to apprehend this guy who I can't remember. Again, names are escaping me, but
We'll look it up.
Yeah, he is a man who creates bioweapons, sells them to the highest bidder. Chris, as a member of the BSAA, I believe at this point, is in pursuit and trying to apprehend this individual. And then that leads into the offshoots of Rebecca Chambers, who
From Resident Evil 0.
Yeah, I don't think has appeared since Resident Evil 0. Is now a professor. She's a scientist doing research, trying to find a cure for the various viruses that exist in the Resident Evil world. So again, it goes down to plot conveniences.
The villain's name is Glenn Arias, by the way.
Arias.
I think they just refer. Yeah, they refer to him by his last name.
Arias. So
I knew it started with an A.
Arias raids Rebecca Chambers' lab. Chris shows up just at the right time.
Yeah, and
So
that's kind of
happens
where you
they
start
know
to
each
get,
other, and
Yeah,
goes
and then
down this line.
And then from there, where Leon comes in, is Leon is now off at this.
Leon is again on vacation again, and
Getting drunk.
Leon. This was the weirdest part of the movie to me. The beginning was weird, but this Leon has basically become Chris Redfield from Resident Evil 6, where like Leon is just like this hopeless drunk who he's given up. He doesn't want to do it anymore. He has lost all hope. He thinks everything I do, my efforts are fruitless, and there's no point in trying anymore. Which was 100% Chris's character from Resident Evil 6, and it's like weird.
That is funny, like if you've played the both, but that I will say, because the movie actually does start with where there's Leon and there's the body bags, and then one of them starts to kind of come to life, and he starts to contemplate, as a boy, I never thought that I would be this, which actually I thought was a really cool thing because it really humanized it. Because I think we as adults think about where we are in life, and I say to myself all the time, man, like I never would have, if you asked 6-year-old me what I thought I'd be doing now, there's no way you could predict anything. So I thought that was a nice way to kind of humanize it. But yeah, he really does lean into the, grumpy old drunk, just leave me alone kind of thing.
Yeah,
which
and
is how
it would have been fine if it wasn't just so directly what Chris's character in Resident Evil 6 was. And it was like, I don't know. Again, it just felt weird to me that like they just took this characterization from who is now also a main character in this movie and applied it to Leon, which never would really fit into how Leon has ever been.
Yeah, it did feel a little strange. I'm glad he snaps out of it pretty quickly, because that was one thing I did feel again, I will say Leon looked normal in this one, so good job. I actually think the
Yeah.
animation in this movie in its entirety was really good. I mean, obviously it's 2017, but it
Yeah.
looks really nice.
I
Um,
thought this yeah, I thought this movie looked beautiful, and I think it goes back to I think all three of these movies did something really well.
mhm.
And this one I think is the animation, and especially the gung fu or the gun fu parts with Leon are
Yeah,
my favorite sequences of any of these movies. So they
when
really
he's
lean
like
into it later
fighting and then
on.
like shoot. Yeah, the part where
Yeah,
he's
I
fighting
think
him and
it's
shooting like close range stuff. That kind
yeah
of part.
where
Yeah,
it mixes martial arts and gunplay. I think gun kata is also something that it's referred to as,
okay,
but I think they do a really good job. It's very reminiscent of, again, this is just very much feels more like anime than the other two do, and I think those
for
action
sure.
sequences are very well choreographed. I think they're very well done. I think they're the
Yeah,
best part of the movie.
this one definitely has the best action sequences. I mean, between like the like there's the part where he's being chased by the dogs on the motorcycle.
Yeah.
I mean, even just like the simple stuff like Chris, because isn't there a part where Chris has the rifle and then he's like, shooting, and then he runs out of ammo and he's like stabbing him with the bayonet.
Yep,
And like,
that's a part in the hallway when they're at the building at the end, which is
yeah,
also where Leon comes in, and it's you have your kung fu / gunplay going on,
yeah,
and it's not
that's
very Resident Evil, but it is.
no.
I think it's very good. I think
Oh no,
that,
I
yeah.
agree. Also, I think, but one of the things I really liked is I feel like of all three of these, I feel like the characters. So if you talk about like Rebecca, Leon, and Chris, I think these characters all feel the most well-rounded and most human. Like I think just even a simple thing like of getting an idea of who Rebecca's character is her first interaction with the fellow scientist who she's kind of in charge of, and they're just talking about coffee and it's goofy and whatever. But like I actually think it was really a nice way to set up like how she was as a person, and I just feel like in general this movie does a better job of any of them, of making them feel like real people. And even like you have the soldiers, they're all talking, and in the like the helicopter, like it's kind of thing, it's like a one of
Yeah,
those weird airplanes.
yeah,
um yeah, I just feel like I felt like dialogue and characterizations of people, these definitely felt the most human, except for maybe the villain Arias, because I mean, I don't know, his thing is
he
I'll
was
get,
yeah, he was very much a cartoon villain in a
yeah,
real world.
I mean, pretty messed up how his family dies though, like when that's like the wedding and then a drone comes, blows everyone up.
Yeah, so
um
the villain's backstory is he
yeah,
was just a kind of run of the mill arms dealer, maybe, or criminal.
he had people who he had issues with them. Yeah,
But yeah, he had governments that wanted him dead.
yeah,
Excuse me. His wedding was drone striked, and everyone at the wedding, presumably other than him, died. So
well, and then but his two friends he saves, and then he turns them into,
well, that's why presumably yes.
yeah. So
Yeah,
then they
so-
turn into which they're cool. I mean, I think also like that again, like the relationship between the two of them, because you start to find it out as the movie goes on, is that the one female character who is this very, she's just super, martial arts, very has like the like tight leather outfit kind of thing, has that very femme fatale sort of vibe
Yeah,
to her.
very
And
much
then
a femme
there's
fatale.
yeah, and then you have this big brute guy who's all like hunchback, kind of deformed, but massive, kind of like the whole.
And I think what they were going with him was kind of this is our modern iteration of the tyrant, of the G virus, of the Mr. X. Like, is this
Yeah,
big hulking brute that is more intelligent than a normal zombie, but also kind of mindless.
yeah, but the thing is, you realize he's not, and then I think there's that moment where you can see they have like the connection. You start to realize that it was the two of them are his two friends who were together. I don't know. I just thought that was like another thing, again, like a little touch that makes it where these movies aren't just mindless action movie, but there's like, I don't know, at least
Yeah.
some attempt at character development.
They work with it a little bit, and
You know,
it shows up in all three of these movies, but never too strongly. The biggest problem I had with this movie was the overall writing, though.
Mm-hmm.
The dialogue was not so bad, but the plot direction and the convenience throughout the entire movie was just way beyond normal suspension of disbelief. That like the same moment Rebecca Chambers' lab is raided, Chris shows up, and he doesn't even know the lab's being raided. He just happens to show up at the same time. When they go try to recruit Leon, he's trying to just ignore them, and all of a sudden this guy that sold Leon out somehow knows where Leon is and shows up just at that moment to tell him that his family's dead and he needs Leon's help. Or not his family's dead, but his family's in trouble.
His family's in danger,
and needs Leon's help. And
then this guy followed them to get, and then obviously there's like the, you have 30 minutes before the, well, even to start with, so Rebecca, like, they release the virus through the air vents in her university, so all of the doctors and all of these people turn into zombies. So she ends up being able to take the newly finished, I think,
the newly finished antivirus that they have not tested and doesn't know if it works or not, and this happens to be the one that works. Yeah.
So she takes it, and then so she's the only one in the whole place who is conveniently not infected, but everyone else is. And then she's, I mean, good on them though. At least they made it, where she's got to fight and claw her way. And I mean, the one thing I'll say about the movie is it keeps it interesting. It keeps it like where she's bashed him in the head with a fire extinguisher, and then she thinks she gets in the one thing. She stabs the one guy with scissors. I mean, there was no shortage of close calls in that. So, I mean, at least it's fun to watch, even though, again, conveniently, Chris comes in. And then, you have later on towards the end of the movie where, it's like she gets infected with the virus, like another form of it. I mean, there's like 20 different forms of this virus.
At this point, this is also, again, going with the like weirdness of Resident Evil canon and what they're going on. The virus they're dealing with here is, I think, something that's supposed to be basically completely different from anything that showed up in the games. So they were referring to it as the A virus.
Right.
And the idea is it's in the air, everyone has it basically. Kind of like I don't know if you're familiar with too much of like zombie storytelling lore and whatever, but this is kind of like The Walking Dead, where everyone is infected, but like it doesn't immediately trigger. Yeah. Where in like something like The Walking Dead, when you die, then it activates on your body. This one, it seems like everyone has it, but then there's an activating second trigger virus, essentially, that makes it act on your body. Is really kind of just...
It's like a 10-step process to getting zombies that you can control. Because, again, it goes into where he controls... he can control them, or at least they're not going to attack him and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that was where it comes in. There's the third. So there's everyone has it. There's an activating agent. And then there's a third agent, which is the targeting agent, which you kind of activate in, I think, a different person. And so if they have the third part activated, the people with the second part activated will target that person. It's kind of how I was reading it, but it was very convoluted. So I don't know for sure if that's what they were going for. But
it is a little convoluted. But yeah, so you have the things like, to go back to, Rebecca gets reinfected with whatever, and then Chris has 30 minutes to get her the vaccine, and conveniently gets it within like 29 minutes and some odd seconds. The fight with him and the final villain, who of course then combines with his buddy to form an even bigger supervillain. I mean, and then again the end. But this is the thing I enjoyed. The end is absolutely ridiculous. Leon comes up like the stairs with his motorcycle. They're fighting on a rooftop. It's just he drives the motorcycle off it at one point.
This could be said of all three movies in very much like Resident Evil fashion. You get to the climax, you have the villain, then the villain takes a second form. And you have to fight Form 2 of the villain, and they all took that route and felt very Resident Evil in that way.
Yeah. You knew it wasn't over right away. You're like, he hasn't combined with something. Some sort of appendage hasn't come out of nowhere.
Right. There needs to be another arm. There needs to be a bigger arm, a bigger eyeball popping off a shoulder.
Like, where are the tentacles? Like, exactly. But again, like, and then so that they're in New York, so they're trying to spread this virus in New York City is how it ends up. And then, it's, so at the same time, they're trying to spread the vaccine, blow up, because I guess the virus is flammable. So they want to blow up all the trucks that are now spreading the virus. and then they want to be able to then eventually drop a vaccine over the city. So there's that going on, and then obviously they fight final boss and save the day, and then they're able to drop the vaccine, and then all the people who were infected are no longer infected. And
Yeah, and in traditional Resident Evil fashion, the good guys win.
yes.
And yeah, so I guess to sum up thoughts on all of these, I think we kind of differ on it, because I think every one of these movies did one thing really well, but also did one thing terribly. So I think Degeneration had, to me, the best story overall in terms of construction. And if you're not interested by it, that's fine. But it just felt very much like a beginning, middle, end. We have these characters introduced. It was like a traditional Resident Evil game. Whereas Damnation and Vendetta, Damnation particularly just felt like a mess of fan service. And then Vendetta was full of plot conveniences. But then with Damnation, you have just everything you love about Leon is in Damnation. Also, he delivers one-liners most of the movie to an empty camera. It is what it is.
What I enjoyed.
Yes,
but yes,
which
so I'll give you. I will say, in terms of, I guess, a linear, well-told, kind of concise story, more concise story with less sort of conveniences and Deus Ex Machinas and all those sorts of things. Degeneration, no.
Yeah, Degeneration.
It is Degeneration. Yeah. Man, I can't get it.
Yeah, I know.
Don't start them with the same letter. I can't handle it. Degeneration is. I'll give you that. I just found the story, like kind of what you said. I just found it less interesting. I personally loved the fan service in Damnation, and I think Vendetta I thought was. Although, yes, as we just kind of started to discuss it, the whole virus setup is very complex in this one, but also there's a part of me that's like, whatever, it's Resident Evil. I mean, ridiculous plots. That's part of why I'm here for Resident Evil. Like, that's why I like it. It's just, I come to expect some ridiculousness. So, I think it's just like, I think you can see a steady increase in quality. If I were to say to someone, obviously if you're going to watch these movies, you should like Resident Evil. I would never tell someone who has never played a Resident Evil game and never even thought about Resident Evil to watch these. Yeah, they are not for you.
If you don't like Resident Evil, don't watch these movies, because they're not good movies. None of them are good movies.
Okay, look, I'm going to say, I would rewatch Damnation and Vendetta. Like, if it was one of those things where I was like, I just need to pop on a movie, I would totally do it. Damnation, no. I think if you are a fan of Resident Evil, I think you will be fine if you skip Damnation, and I think you will enjoy.
You'd be fine. Degeneration is the one.
Yes, man, I keep mixing these up. You're right. Sorry. So, Degeneration would be the one to skip. Damnation and Vendetta, I say give them a watch. I think you'll enjoy them.
Yeah, I think they all offer something that's decent. They all have huge flaws. If you don't like Resident Evil, don't watch them, obviously. But they're interesting. All of these movies are interesting in their own right. It's interesting that they're considered canon, and there's just a lot of implications on that. But yeah, I don't know. I had fun watching them.
Me too.
None of them are good, but they're all fine.
I think they're fun, stupid movies. And if you're a fan of Resident Evil, I think you should give them a look. They're better than the live-action Resident Evil movies, which is a whole other thing. But I've only seen the first two or three.
That's a different discussion, because those I just learned the other day that there are 6 of them, maybe even 7. Which I have only seen the first 2, and I thought there were 5 or 4 or 5, but there's way more than that.
No, they've just kept them going.
That's a whole.
I don't know who's keeping those alive.
But yeah, we're running on an hour here, so I think it's a good time to
wrap this up. But hopefully you enjoyed our thoughts on this, and again, we'll have maybe some more thoughts on the anime video game crossover later at a later date. But thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.
Yep, we'll see you next time.